Good evening, and welcome to Triple D Good Friday edition. Today we have with us Father Lynn, your pastor, Deacon Dallas Kelly, your
deacon,
one of your best deacons.
We need an applause background noise.
We'll start working on that soon.
You have one of those keyboards that make all
little
the
dinging noises and stuff. So, and myself, Deacon Tim. And this is our third episode of Triple D, and we're excited to be here on a Good Friday, a Good Friday. So,
give us a minute to catch our breath.
Yeah, the service tonight ran a little bit longer than we anticipated, and we are now, as Deacon Dallas said, just catching our breath, trying to.
We have to climb a flight of stairs
to make that happen. Hopefully, everybody was able to check out the live stream today for the Good Friday service, which was had a little bit of maybe one or two technical glitches, but all in all, I think we're doing pretty good with our live streams, and we're hoping that once this pandemic is over, that we may or may not continue the live streams at church. We haven't really talked about that, Father, have we, at all?
No.
But definitely we want to continue this format, and for this format, what we want to do is once the pandemic is lifted, we want to take the show kind of on the road, maybe have it at Galvin's or Mikasita or somewhere where we can have a live crowd and talk to people one-on-one, have them ask questions, and really this show is about you all and questions that you have about our faith, the Catholic faith, and doctrine. And so questions are important, and we'll get to some of those questions here in just a second. But I wanted to just kind of start us off here with just kind of current events. And, I think I might be surprising you guys a little bit with that topic, just to kind of ice break, settle us down a little bit. But I was thinking just something going on from a Catholic perspective in the world. I'll start, and you all can pick up after that. How about that?
Sounds good.
So two things that kind of came up for me today was saw off Catholic news that China's first canonized saint was from Wuhan, and he was a martyr. So I thought that was kind of unique. I didn't dive any more into that. But it had to do with, I think he was strangled to death. So the CNA was basically saying, hey, that's kind of good and fitting that it was from Wuhan because people are dying from asphyxiation from this disease. So, and then the second thing I saw was about a year ago, everybody I think knows that Notre Dame Cathedral burned down, right? And one of the first things that they've had back in the cathedral was today. They actually had a rare public broadcast of the relic of the Crown of Thorns for an hour on TV. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and just a couple things that are going on. So if those interest you, you can obviously Google those and get the complete story. Which one of you wants to go next as far as current events? Anybody got a current event they want to share?
Well, like you said, you caught us off guard. And I got to be honest with you. Except for Catholic news agencies and things trying to go on in the church, and I didn't catch those two, which surprises me because I watch the news agencies a lot. I've turned basically every channel off. I don't watch almost anything because from start to finish, no matter what channel you turn it on, it's about the virus. It's depressing. So I turn it. And what did I text you the other day? I was watching it. It's getting so boring at the house sometimes, all the housework's done. What sport was I watching?
Frisbee golf.
Frisbee golf.
Frisbee golf.
We've gotten so bad now we're watching, and it was a replay of Frisbee golf. So that's the extent of my day, watching YouTube videos. Which I do get on there and watch St. John's videos that we have on the YouTubes over and over.
You critique
all them views. I think half of them might be mine.
You critique our social media presence. So. What about you, Padre? What anything current event wise? I know you've obviously been doing lots of your videos and
I'm doing a lot of video, but actually today I follow the president, the White House casting, and the governor
one thing that's captivated me is the amount of language from political right now talk about Christianity. It's amazing. And the president at one point he would say, now you all remember, he talked to the press, you all remember today is Good Friday, so be nice, be nice. And Pence talk about, he thanks many church leaders and really support this ordeal about encourage people to contribution, make sure you support churches, and because they are doing the ministry and the stuff we're doing here, the stuff that Larry Osa is doing, it's non-stop. We are still actively function with Scott County, Transform Scott County. They always call me and ask for put people up, no food, and we work with them very diligently. So the word that from Vice President Pence is very encouraging, and the governor, same thing. He mentioned about it. It's just fascinating. It's so powerful for him. Very rooted in faith, very rooted in their Christian faith, and highlight about the importance of the Easter celebration and the resurrection. And one point was saying about Good Friday. They mentioned a lot about Good Friday, but after Good Friday will be resurrection. And for me, when the last time you hear that from
it's a done deal. We know that's going to happen, right?
Oh yeah, we know what happened. That's why we have hope and faith in that. So for me, watching the news, perhaps boring and stressful pandemic, as you may say, Dallas. But it's powerful to see the leaders of our secular world or mention about the faith, and that's mean a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I saw part of the governor's thing today too, and he had a video, I think, from some pastors around the state, and then I think I saw a video with Bishop John in it that he released earlier this week in one of his press conferences. So urging people to stay home, I think. Right. So. The governor does have a lot of his own hashtags now, so we'll get through this. We'll get through this together. I think is the big one. Is the big one. So obviously the big current news then is the pandemic. One of the things I did want to just take a moment to kind of really talk about here just for a second, and Father Lynn just mentioned it, is support of the parish. Obviously, we're based here at St. Francis of John Parish. Whether you are already a parishioner, a newcomer, a friend of a friend, or someone just exploring churches in our area, we hope you will find the show enjoying and informative. It's our desire that this show reflects the spirit of our community and our love of Christ and neighbor. As is the case with most churches, we survive based on the goodwill of our parishioners and our friends through donations. If you enjoyed tonight's show, please consider giving online at ssfj.org. That's ssfj.org. That will take you to our online giving portal for a one-time donation as well as weekly or regular tithing. And as always, we thank you for your generosity.
We're not selling indulgences.
No indulgences today.
So. We might consider selling indulgences.
Okay. That was your idea, Father, not mine. So, we're to the point of this show now where we're going to pick up some questions from last week. And I know I had a couple that came in, and I know Dallas had a couple that came in. I don't know, Father, did anybody ask you any questions from last week at all?
I don't have Facebook, so I don't know.
Well, for not having Facebook, you are kind of a Facebook star right now. So, how about we just go back and forth on a couple of these? I had a listener from last week send me a question. Says, does the lack of a traditional Palm Sunday Mass, large crowds with lots of palms, have any effects on Ash Wednesday next year? And I think what he was thinking was we weren't giving out palms, and we weren't going to have any palms to burn to make ashes for next year. But we do have lots of palms.
Oh, we got a lot of palms, but it's not going out. But it's all here. So we're going to have a bonfire of palms. We will have a lot of ashes next year.
Yeah, if you watch the broadcast, he blessed. I don't know how many's in there, 1,000?
If not more, yeah.
Several pounds of
and
ashes.
They're still sitting back there in the sacks.
So we will have ashes next Ash Wednesday for sure, regardless of whether we passed out. Well, actually, we'll have more ashes because we'll have more palms to burn because they didn't all go out.
Well, my hope, like I say, all this stuff done, I hope to do one gigantic mega mass we will have our palms in it and everything, put everything into one. I've been thinking about that. So people can get blessed palms, even though not Palm Sunday, but everything we live on Palm Sunday anyway. So
No, make a mass. That's a good
that'd be
idea.
fun. I think
Yeah,
it'd be fun.
maybe we can do it part of the festival or
There
something.
you go. I think we should. Yeah.
So, all right, Dallas, you had a really hard question. You said a listener wanted to know if an atheist can go to heaven.
Well, they caught part of my thing when we were talking about Vatican II, and when they re-looked into what is in the church, what is the church, and all salvation comes through the church, no matter what. And I had mentioned, whether it's a Baptist going to heaven, it's still through the church somehow, visible or invisible to us. Or if a Muslim or an atheist, and I just threw that atheist out there real quick, but they caught on to it and wanted to know, it was kind of like, atheists can go to heaven, and my statement to him was absolutely. The church, what the church would say is they have the possibility of heaven. Anybody ever born, the church would say, has the possibility of going to heaven if, through invincible ignorance on their own, they use the grace that's given to them from God in a good way and don't lose that grace somehow through sin. They have we're not saying they're going to heaven. I'm not saying any Catholic is going to heaven, but they do have the possibility of heaven. But yet it's still through the church somehow.
Yeah, because you talk the nature. When people, like I said last time, we talked about when people talk about churches, they talk about little C, the little C. But when we talk about church in Jesus Christ, a big C, the salvation, redemption of all humanity, and if not is creation.
Yeah.
So oftentimes we ourselves are short or small in the reality of church. What Deacon Dallas presented is very true. The salvation is reserved to Christ, okay? And the teaching of the church very clear on that. So tonight, if y'all remember one of the prayer, we pray for those non-Christian, right? The people believe in good works, and all of that stuff.
Well, we prayed for non-Christians and ones that don't even believe in God at all.
There you go.
I was going to add to that while he was talking now.
Did I distract you?
It is a hard thing for Catholics.
Oh yeah, I know what I was going to say now. Now you might be sitting there listening, depending on how many viewers we have. Hopefully we got more than 2.
20.
Because I can't see who we have. I don't have a screen this week. You might be thinking, well, why be Catholic? If everybody has the possibility of heaven. And what I usually tell people is, if your main goal in life is heaven, do you want the fullness of what Christ wants for us, which is all 7 sacraments? Or as we talked about an atheist, or basically nothing. Christ would have to work outside the sacraments to give them any grace at all. So we would want the fullness of what Christ wants, because we have everything that Christ wants for us. That's all right. Truth.
All truth.
So with that, we do have as Catholics the advantage over most. Now, we need to live it and work on it, work through the sacraments to receive that grace.
Good answer.
Yeah. I knew you would have a good answer for that one. You also had a second question too, right? You had a question about, you mentioned the teaching you used, the marriage and the Trinity. Is that the same type of teaching that the church teaches on contraceptive, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when this person asked me this, I was like, hey, you that's exactly right. That's the church's. Last week somebody asked, they was listening to some priest blog, and they were talking about God the Father's pure love and Jesus is pure love, and that total self-giving of the love of each other. Through that you have the Holy Spirit. And I brought up the fact that that's exactly what marriage is supposed to mirror the Trinity. Through that total self-giving love of the husband and total self-giving love of the wife, you join together in the consummation, the conjugal act. And through that total self-giving to each other, there produces a third person, when you have a baby. And the church's teaching on use of artificial contraception is exactly that. When you use artificial contraception in the conjugal act, you are not giving your total self-giving to each other. You're holding back something, and in this case, your fertility. So you are basically saying, you know, you put a bud in there, a B-U-T. I love you totally, but. Well, every time you do the conjugal act, you renew the covenant you have it with your spouse and with God. Marriage is a covenant. So every time you use artificial contraception in the conjugal act, it thwarts
inception.
Yeah.
You know, if you talk about the Trinity, they all look at each other and tuned in, like last time we talked about, Father, Son, Holy Spirit are honed in with each other wholeheartedly. But then the word contra inception, in other words, you know, I cut off from my receiving you, then it's not anti-Trinitarian.
Because I've heard other people, and I've taken this from somebody I've listened to, well, not just one person, many. Look at a crucifix. Did Jesus hold anything back? Can you look at that and say, well, he held that part back? No, it's total self-giving. And that's what's supposed to mirror the Trinity in the conjugal act.
That's marriage.
That's marriage.
If they want to read, Fulton Sheen wrote about that, okay? Married to the third. You know, man and woman in union of love, you are married to the third. And that union form, you know, a total given of love. So it's worth reading from Fulton Sheen.
Now, that is one of, when I was coming back to the church 20-something years ago, it was that teaching, believe it, of all the teachings that brought me back as far as my knowledge of not necessarily the teaching, but coming to realize when you look at history, throughout Christianity for 1930 years of Christianity, you had the Catholic Church and the Orthodox up to 1500, the Reformation. But even after the Reformation, you start, every Christian church, without exception, taught that artificial contraception was wrong. And it wasn't until 1930 in the Lambeth Conference in the Anglican, they finally said, okay, with marriage, they gave a little, and then every other Christian church said no, you know, couldn't believe that the Anglicans were caving in. And then slowly but surely through the years, every Christian church says the use of artificial contraception is legitimate, except one. And that one is what drew me in. Because the Catholic Church claims it is the one that Christ founded, and it will not give in to that. So that was the draw to me.
That can be a future episode where we talk about our conversion or our draws back from the church if we were away from the church or whatever. And a good segue to talk about maybe marriage and what that's all about for us from a vocation perspective. So sometimes the questions aren't easy.
Never easy.
But there's generally there's generally always an answer, you know. That's what the catechism for.
All right, so let's get into.
Did you just have the one? You just had the one.
I got another one,
oh.
But we're going to come back to that.
Okay.
I think that kind of maybe ties in a little bit on the backside of this topic, today's topic, which is suffering, and very apropos for that to be on Good Friday. And part of prepping for today, one of the things that I did is I tried to find a good quote about suffering. And I stumbled upon this one from C.S. Lewis, which I think is pretty good. C.S. Lewis says, we can ignore even pleasure, but pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks to us in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is a megaphone to rouse a deaf world. I was thinking, it's true, right? I mean, when we go through life, and now in this pandemic is a good example, we go through life, we complain, we have things that are going on, but when we take all this stuff away, it really magnifies what suffering is. And people being home with their kids like all the time, it just really changes the perception and what you see and how you feel.
And one of what church says about suffering is God, through suffering, God will always allow somehow good to come out of the suffering. Now, sometimes you can't see that good. You might live for years and not see it, and die and never see it, but it might even be after your death. But this pandemic we're going through now, man, it is helping us realize how much we've taken for granted in life. That to me, that's the good coming out. How much people you see on Facebook are people longing to come back to church to receive the sacraments.
It's really is crazy. That's one of the things that you do see on Facebook. A lot of people complain about Palm Sunday, not being able to get palms. And we just, who would ever thought that somebody would be complaining about not being able to get palms, or not being able to smell the chrism oil, right, or at the chrism mass, or not being able to carry the banner at the chrism mass, right? I mean, it's the things that are just that we just do. We really take for granted.
And so people like in our CIA, they very hurt right now. A lot of them is really sad.
Yeah. And we're the lucky ones. We still get to receive the sacraments.
Mm-hmm. We're very blessed in that regard. And parents call about first communion and confirmation for that matter. It's like you say, Dallas. It could be a lot of good things come out of this. But are we willing to persevere through the suffering that we may see the wisdom of God? There's a lot of that in suffering, the prescribed through the suffering process is required to that persevere. Oftentimes I talk about the idea of suffering is almost like, besides don't draw into philosophical nature or theological, just make a diamond. Think about how diamond was formed. Through a lot of compression of earthly rock matter, through years, and it become polished, become diamond. Just like, God tests in the book of King, golden furnace. God tested with the golden furnace. To make it gold, it requires that persevere, so something to think about.
And there's two ways to deal with suffering: love or not love. You got the two thieves on the cross. One accepted his suffering and literally out loud said, "We deserve this," but remember me when you enter your Father's kingdom. So he accepted it with love, and look what happened to the other. And we can only assume what happened to him.
Right.
Yeah, I mean we talk about all the sacraments that are being missed. We talk about weddings too, right? I think didn't you have a wedding coming up soon? Is it
Two weddings?
Yeah. I've got one that at the end of May. A lot of uncertainty, which there's always a lot of stress in a wedding, much more so than in a funeral. But this obviously adds another characteristic to it, another viewpoint to it. But I'm glad, that my kids aren't getting married, because it is that uncertainty really causes a lot of pain for people, and the unknown, right? It's the unknown, and they got this love. We were just talking about marriage and having a love for somebody, and what do they do? I think your weddings are going to take place, right? They're going to be
actually, one will be postponed to August because one of the parents is not from here, and their state was quarantine everybody. They could not leave the state.
Wow.
So then they couldn't do it. Before they wouldn't do smaller, now they can't do it. But it's all good, and good to talk to them and say, I'm open. I'm there to transform, change anything you need. Time is good, so do it.
Yeah. I think the one I'm doing, where I think they're still going to have it, but I think they're going to plan a bigger celebration later on. Yeah, later on in the year.
So. As minister, I think it's good for us to accommodate our people in their circumstances. Yeah, I did. One of them coming up, I actually offer that. They like that idea. We do an actual wedding. Yeah, small, 10 people. And then later on, when all this lifted, and we should do something, a big shindig for everybody. So it's good.
Yeah, and I think the part that's probably, I mean, obviously a wedding's hard, you know, the uncertainty that comes with it. But I think the hardest part is funerals. You know, I had a co-worker's spouse died at work a couple weeks ago, and you know, I was going through the obituaries, just trying to get the obituary as soon as it came out, and I was just reading a lot of the obituaries, and 9 out of 10 are private. You know, celebration of life to happen, you know, sometime down the road, and it just, you know, it's you really from our perspective, a Catholic perspective, it really misses out on what a funeral really is about.
Yeah, I was just talking about this to both of y'all in the sacristy the other day. And last week, a couple of my siblings were, and my niece was viewing. I don't know if they're on today, but you know, it might sound weird talking about my own mother passed away just a few weeks ago. How lucky we are that she died the day she died. Because I think it was, we looked at the timing, and I think it was you, Father, that told me the next day we don't have a funeral. Mm-hmm. And yet we had a funeral mass, all the family and friends got to come and all that. Because we was already not receiving from the cup during the masses.
That's right.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's hard to, I mean, because my mom's obviously in a nursing home, and you know, a lot of this COVID is going through nursing homes now. I didn't realize how bad that was until the governor's talk today. Luckily, the nursing home that she's in and the nursing home that my mother-in-law's in, neither one of them have any cases yet. But you know, it makes you think, man, just hope that doesn't happen. You know,
You know, I'm working with one of our parishioners right now and pray for her terminal cancer, and nobody can visit her. You know, able to talk to her on the phone. Even her children can't come see her, and it's just tough. You know, a lot of people die alone.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things. I get an email from the nursing home every evening that says, you know, how they're doing, and you know, encourages the use of FaceTime, and I do, and I FaceTime my mom when she has her hearing aids in, she can hear it ring, she'll answer. A lot of times she forgets to put them in, so it's hit or miss. But you know, there is a lot of loneliness. Mm-hmm. There's loneliness in nursing homes anyway. This, I think, just really compounds it, because the people that were getting a visit once a month now aren't getting any visits. And maybe it'll do the same thing that the sacraments did, right? That people yearn for the sacraments. Maybe there'll be this yearning to go see loved ones, where you know, more people will go and visit.
That was a nice clip. I think it was on Herald Leader. It was last week, I think. There was a guy who determined to see his mother in the nursing home. So she lived like on the 3rd floor. He ran a lift and see her through the window. That was awesome. You know, you know, we don't know how value those relationships that we have until it happened. Just like a sacrament, man. So then in itself, it's part of suffering.
Yeah,
you know?
It's that love, right? I mean, that's the love that comes through suffering, right? That love becomes greater as a result of suffering.
Right.
So, anybody come up with any good Catholic people that are models of suffering? Besides Jesus. I mean, that was a good one, right? I was thinking Padre Pio. Didn't he had stigmata? Yeah.
Many of them, all the saints, you know, John Paul II. Saint John Paul II.
Just thousands of them. My favorite saint, and I brought it up in a homily for it, St. Thomas More. Mm-hmm. It's hard for us to fathom. All he has to do, you know, he's imprisoned, and all he has to do is sign a paper saying the king is the head of the church.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Just sign your paper, and you keep your head. How many of us would sign that paper? And he said,
movie, A Man of All Seasons.
Yeah, Man for All Seasons. Yeah. That's a very good movie. And here's what I think is funny about that verdict of finding him guilty is the king was really good friends with Thomas More, and his original sentence was to what was it? You get hung to an inch of your life, then you have a device put up in you and your entrails are pulled out, still alive, and then you get your head cut off after all that torture. But since he was good friends, he did away with the other two things and he just cut his head. He just cut his head. That's a good friend. Just cut his head off. You know, bypass that other stuff.
Wow. John Paul II. That's a great one, especially at the end of his life, right?
Yeah, he persevered through his is that Parkinson?
Yes. Yep.
You know, and
I had forgotten he had Parkinson.
oh yeah, it was tough, and he persevered through it, and continued to live as a beautiful model of witness. You know.
But if you remember when he was in the last stages of his life, like the last year or two, the public who doesn't know suffering was asked, you know, he needs to resign. You remember all that?
Oh yeah.
Getting all that. He needs to resign, let somebody else younger run the church and all that stuff. When we were going, no, he's embracing it. It was a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah.
That sounds terrible, but
he's witnessed.
he was embracing it.
In society that so quickly run away from suffering, and he witnessed a testament. Right?
And we all do to some, you know, when we receive suffering, nobody wants it, you know, unless you're already saintly. You know, first reaction is to reject it, you know, or give me a pill to take it away.
Exactly. You know, in society, that's what happened. But for us, from the Christian point of view, we call it the suffering servant, that terminology, right? I think Anthony the Mayo will use that first.
Let's see. I got a couple comments here. The volume is very low for Father Lynn. Well, that's unusual. So I'll see if we crank that up just a little bit. Maybe it'll be a little bit better there. Let's see where we are here. Anything else on suffering?
And a lot of people, you know, I get comments from parishioners sometimes, you know, I'm praying for this suffering, and nothing's happened. And I always try to remind them, and I know it's hard when they're the ones going through it, and I'm not at the time, that Paul himself asked God to take this thorn from his side, and he said no. He said, you have to keep the suffering. My grace will get you through this, will be sufficient. So sometimes we don't like the answer, you know. And nobody really knows. People speculate what exactly that thorn Paul's talking about was. Nobody really knows.
I think it's very important to look at suffering concept, because people oftentimes why God lets suffering in. Okay, we can talk about from the fall, you know, of sin. But more than that, I think when we compare in comparison to God, oftentimes, you know, like if you talk about the Holocaust, you know, why God let such things happen. But oftentimes people, because we are so finite, we are so small, naturally when we look at suffering, it's actually drawn toward us. But what Jesus pointed to us, much more a grandeur vision, the beatific vision, right? A vision that compare, who was that dude? But anyhow, when we talk about a bigger vision, what we are so small, oftentimes it's hard to comprehend. Oftentimes I say, well, if you have a little boo-boo on your hand, right? We keep picking at it, and it's hurt. Mom always say, just let it go, you know, do something else, forget about it, then it's fine. So, you know, that important to keep into perspective too. Oftentimes we naturally hone into our own in that level of suffering, but there is a lot of grandeur God wants us to see beyond the confinement of that suffering reality, to point to something much more glorified. I think when all the saints, we talk about Saint John Paul II, that is what we are talking about as a faith. You know, he pointed to something much more greater than his Parkinson. You know,
that's kind of a segue into redemptive suffering, right?
Yes, redemptive suffering, definitely.
You know, I've always read, you know, God could have saved the world just with a word, right? But he didn't. Yeah, I mean, he took human form. Mm-hmm. He suffered. I mean, he lived our lives. He's not asking us to do anything that he hasn't already done. And to me, that's an amazing thing when you think of that. And Kelly said today that she watched The Passion of the Christ today, and I think that movie does really kind of captures the suffering that Jesus endured on this day, 2,000 years ago. I mean, it's hard for us to really fathom it, but it was a brutal death.
But it's beautiful. I think what Mel Gibson did well, the ugliness of being beaten, the more beautiful Christ is. And that's what love is, isn't it? What more beautiful than, you guys, parents, you should know, stay up all day, all night because one of your kid is really sick. And that's redemptive suffering. That's what Christ is. And that's what love is, right?
I can remember way back. How many years ago did that come out? It's quite a few years.
Well, we did it pretty much every Lent when you first came, so it had to be 12, 15 years ago.
I remember a funny story with that movie, and one of the members of my family was watching, so if they're watching this week, maybe you could remind your dad. They went to see that movie, and her dad walked into the theater with a humongous, the biggest popcorn you can buy with in a bucket.
a large.
She looked at her dad and said, "Dad, this ain't a popcorn movie." And when he left the movie, it was still full. That's how grotesque and brutal that movie was. And I mean, you listen to Mel Gibson. They had to take.
They have to tone that.
They have to tone it. They took a lot of the even worse parts out, or they wouldn't even give it an R rating.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that the Renaissance did us an injustice when they made the crucifix an art, right?
Right.
An art form. They took out the savagery of the Romans and what that execution method really was, and that's part of it. But what Mel Gibson, I think, captures so beautifully is the part leading up to that.
Right.
I mean, obviously crucifixion is bad in and by itself, but the scourging at the pillar, we said that today at the Stations of the Cross, and scourging at the pillar. We just have no concept of what that is, and that movie, I mean, it captures it. Those whips that they had, those bones and chunks of metal and stuff in. I mean, ripping flesh out. I mean, if you haven't seen that movie, you need to see it.
Maybe you want to see it. Yeah.
It's it really does capture the essence of what God gave us, really. So let's see if I have any other notes here on suffering. Maybe that's a good segue to the question, right? Can we that question you and I talked about?
You have to refresh me again.
A listener proposed a question for discussion. Yeah, why is it that more people don't know about Our Lady of Seven Sorrows Rosary? That was Megan. She said she kind of stumbled on it, and it's a great reflection of the suffering and sorrows of our Mother Mary. I'm ashamed to say I've never heard of it.
I don't know one single person that prays the Seven Sorrows Rosary. So
I do.
Do you? I don't know anybody. But the answer is I don't know why. It's just the 5-decade Rosary with all the different mysteries. It's kind of just a tradition people clung to more than the other one.
Can one of you give me an overview of what it is?
Sure.
I don't care which one of you.
The thing is, on the regular Rosary, you have 5 decades. You say 10 Hail Marys to Our Father, 10 Hail Marys to Our Father 5 times. Tim's got the Rosary right there. Are they seeing that?
Yeah.
On the Seven Sorrow Rosary, you've got 7 sections of 7 Hail Marys. You can't say decade because a decade is 10.
10, right.
So what would you call that? Queen something? You got 49 Hail Marys, 7 sections. And the 7 sorrows that you pray to and meditate on, or the first one is Simeon's prophecy, where he met them when Jesus was taken to the temple. And he promised Mary a sword will pierce her soul. Then you have the flight to Egypt when Joseph was saw in a dream that he needs to take the family to Egypt. You got Jesus in the temple. You got Mary sees Jesus carrying his cross. You got Mary at the foot of the cross. Then you got Mary receives Jesus' dead body in her arms, and we know that from the how do you say that, Pieta statue.
Right.
And then they placed Jesus in the tomb, and Mary was there. So those are the 7 sorrows, and they come with 7 promises, kind of like the other rosary does. I'm not quite sure the 5 decorate how many promises there are, but the promises are Mary will grant you peace to families, to give you inner peace, enlightenment about the mysteries themselves that you're meditating on, consolation in pain. It will console you when you're in pain. Grant your prayers, but only according to God's will. She will be with you and defend you in spiritual battles. She will be there praying with you at the moment of your death. And grace will be given to you through this devotion at the time of your death. So those are the 7 promises. But once again, why nobody prays it? Whoever asked that question, hey, go for it.
Megan said it's a septet. I think I'm saying that right. S-E-P-T-E-T. 7 septet. Septet.
It's a Sivite, formed by the Sivite orders back in, I think, the 13th century.
It was in the 13th.
Was blessed by Benedict XIV, maybe.
Interesting. We've never prayed that here, though, have we? At adoration?
I've never prayed it not one time.
No, it's a smaller devotion. It's not there are different kind of devotion that much more popular. Like, for example, we talk about the coming up, we're going to pray. I think the Knight Columbus encouraged right now to pray the Divine Chaplet, to seek the whole novena, because the popularity of that, because of St. John Paul II, who promoted as a pope during the time very critical for Poland, and Sister Faustina, because of that mystery, so it become magnified, explosive. Okay, of course the Rosary from Fatima. Okay, much more magnitude, but from the Sivite order, very small, so therefore it's smaller devotion, the mystery of Our Lady of Sorrow. I actually have an icon of Our Lady of Sorrow, very beautiful, very, very gloomy, very sad image.
Can you buy a rosary in that form?
I got them, when you asked me about it, I got on Amazon, and yes, they sell them on Amazon.
Amazon have everything.
Yeah, so I did find them. Cheapest one I found, I think, was like $13.
Wow. Well, I'll have to look on my favorite place for rosaries, which is where these came from. This is from Rugged Rosary, and actually I got a rosary for each one of y'all.
You do?
Yeah. So here's yours.
Oh wow.
There's yours.
Bless you. Son.
And yours is in black.
This is so cool. You know why?
Wow.
Black on black.
Because all my rosary, even the Knight Columbus, is gone.
And that's actually a Knights of Columbus one. It's a Knights of Columbus Rugged Rosary. So.
It had to be rugged because I torn every one of them when I prayed.
Can you feel the Our Father when you come to it? Yeah, you feel the robe first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you all see that? Is that cool?
And you know what's neat is we can all bless our own, right?
Yeah, we can all bless our own.
I don't have to go find anybody to bless them.
But what I'm going to do,
Which came up last week.
I'm going to see if Rugged Rosaries actually has an Our Lady of Sorrow. Here's your bag that goes with it now.
I love that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Where'd you get this?
It's called Rugged Rosaries. Maybe they'll be a sponsor of the show sometime. But very durable, and it's got a really good feel to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
it's heavy, So I'm going to see if they've got one for the 7 Sorrows. If they do, then I'm going to get one, and maybe we'll give it away to a lucky listener at one of the next shows, because we do crazy stuff like that, and we'll see what we can come up with. So that's kind of suffering. We haven't got a whole lot of questions. We did get one question here so far. we've got some technical questions, but we got one question about a subject. And Chris Spalding, do either one of you know Chris Spalding?
Yes.
Chris Spalding says, a little off subject, but what's your take on Pilate? It seems
As
that
in Pontius Pilate?
Pontius Pilate,
Okay.
yeah. It seems that he sees no guilt in Jesus and resents handing him over, but eventually gives in to the crowd. Sometimes I wonder if he's an innocent victim between Jesus and the crowd.
Innocent victim between Jesus and the crowd.
Right.
Oh, he caught between it.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, he's definitely caught between it, but he still gives in. You know?
Yeah, it was funny when we were reading the Passion tonight. I was looking in the Missalette, and one of the things it says in the Missalette, it says, we read the Passion because we want to experience the full story, but we don't hold the Jewish people responsible for the death of Christ. And
Us.
Yeah, that's us. Obviously, Pilate had a role to play, right?
Yeah.
But it was bigger than Pilate. I mean, he was an important part in the story, obviously, but he wasn't. He was going to follow through to make the people happy. He was in a remote part of the Roman Empire. He didn't want to draw attention to himself. And remember, the threat that was made basically was, look, if you don't take care of this, we're going to run this up the flagpole, so to speak. It's going to get back to Rome and the emperor, and you're going to have a problem. And I think that's one of the things that we kind of forget is that it's not like this was like a big town and it was just kind of, everything was going on and he was the ruler of that town by himself. I mean, he was not the emperor. He was in charge of this little town, but he just wasn't the guy. He wasn't the guy making all the rules, and he would have been in serious trouble if it would have got out of his little jurisdiction. He would have had a problem. And I think that's one of the reasons I think that he gave in, because he knew he wasn't going to appease the crowd, and that was the goal of the crowd. You have anything else to say about that? What about the Pilate?
Yeah, the character of the Pontius Pilate, it's very neat. It pointing when that in conversation with Jesus, asking him about the truth. Remember?
What is truth?
What is truth? And Jesus, before he said, "I am." Truth is point to a person. Pilate, because he rooted in his power, he lost his character. He lost his integrity. That's what sin is, right? Sin is when we lost our own character, our own dignity, our own how God made us. But yet Jesus, on the other hand, stood tall on the truth. The truth is not fact or fiction. Truth is point to a person. So Pilate, he lost that truth. That's what Jesus say. The power you have is not in yours.
Right.
In other words, Pilate lost the lineage of true reality. So he caught up within himself, because he caught up with power, honor, prestige. All that so-called original sins, or the capital sins, okay, of self. So he caught up with himself.
Don't you think too? A lot of fear in general leads to sin. When we're afraid, we sin. Whether that's because we're afraid we're going to run out of money, so we might do something, to get more money, or we're afraid we're going to lose somebody, so we do something. It's that fear. I think that's one of the things that
Yes, sir.
do not be afraid, right? Trust in me, and I think that's the hardest thing to do. And obviously Pilate, I think the story really illustrates that he knew what the right thing to do was, and he tried. He wanted to do that. It just he couldn't handle it.
Like Judas, out of fear, he hung himself, and Pilate on the reverse, out of fear that he wash his head. I have nothing to do with it. It come down to that level of each and every one of us, isn't it? How often we compromise of standing for the truth.
No, I mean, I think we all do the same thing to Jesus, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know, sometime in our life we get to that point where we make, and that's sin, right? We make a decision. Do I do what's right for Jesus? Because Pilate's listening to him, and he's like, this guy's saying stuff that's scaring me, right? I mean, and that fear. I mean, when he said he wasn't from this world. I mean, that really freaked Pilate out. He's like, whoa, what's he talking about? What am I getting into here? And I think that fear, he had that just for a little bit, but the fear of this crowd and this thing that was kind of moving in on him was more than that. And I think that's what happens to us, right? You know, I have a relationship with you, and something's going on with me and you, and I might sin against you. I might do something to you because it's right here and now. We live in the here and present without really understanding what the repercussions are with God. We kind of put that in the back of our minds, and it's not front and center where it was. And I think that's what happened with Pilate.
I died.
You ran out of juice?
My phone just went out.
Oh man,
They can hear my voice.
they can, but I can hook you up because that's what I do. But we'll try to get Dallas back on his camera here.
Do you know that dude, Pontius Pilate himself, his history say, after Jesus' crucifixion, he was sent into exile, commit suicide on his own accord. Some tradition assert that after he committed suicide, his body was thrown into Tiber River.
So he kind of followed in the footsteps of Judas.
Yeah, pretty much. You can see that. So technically, to answer that question, he is not innocent. He represent the originality of the sin of humanity. We live in that ordeal. So it's a good question, a good reflection on that.
Great question. We always like when we get good questions because, like I said at the beginning, that's what keeps this show going is questions. Because if we don't have questions, then we don't have answers. We got Deacon Dallas back. All right.
So there's no more questions. Everybody out there knows their faith so well already. All this time off, they must have been really studying the faith. Like I told him to last
we
week.
did get a comment from Jason Berry. He says he was talking about Pilate. He says he was the mayor with a city council that was mad.
Close enough, yeah.
I think that's really that's pretty good, Jason. Very very much. I can't believe we don't have any more questions, but which is kind of good because we're pushing up on the hour anyway. So the final segment here of actually we got a couple things. We do have Saint of the Day. I don't have the graphic, unfortunately. I forgot to download the graphic, if you can believe that.
So who is Saint of the Day?
Saint of the Day is Saint Terence. He was a 1st century bishop of Iconium. And interesting enough, he was martyred towards the end of the 1st century, but from the research that I did, he may have been Tertullus, mentioned by St. Paul the Apostle in his letter to the Romans. In Romans 16:22, it actually looks like Tertullus is writing that letter, or part of the letter, because he talks about Timothy and Paul and this Tertullus, who they believe eventually became pope and took the name Terence. So he was martyred, and this image that I was going to put up on the screen, which I forgot to download, is a beautiful Greek icon, and maybe we'll put that up so somebody can see it next time. Unfortunately, a lot of stuff going on today, and we've had a lot of little technical glitches here and there, including Dallas losing his power to his phone. So I jumped around a little bit there, guys, but final thoughts.
God is good.
God is good. We got 2 days done in the Tritium.
Today done the Tritium.
This is the marathon.
The great marathon. Very, very interesting, actually.
Interesting way to celebrate.
Interesting. It's just weird, but yet there is certain beauty about it. You know, like for me, nailed together with you guys at the cross of Jesus. No, our people it's everywhere. You know, Ionian or not, but yet there is a beauty behind the bearing of that cross, that wood. Reminded we are in solidarity no matter what. Doesn't matter where you are, and we are in together.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about suffering, getting back to that, I don't think the camera could see my face. But when we were knelt there forever, I was in some pain.
I was thinking the same thing. I said, okay, we're going to kneel through this song. And it was a long song. They sang every verse, right? And then they started the second song, and I looked over. I don't know if you saw me. I looked over to you, and I could, because you got a bad neck, and you know, and I knew my back was hurting, and I was thinking, it's just different, right? I mean,
very different.
And even Skip's not here, but just Skip preaching, to a camera, and you preach it to a camera. You've done it a lot now. I mean, how different is that? I mean, it's got to be challenging.
Definitely, it's shorter. You can, I think the privilege of the advantage for me, I've been here 13 years. You guys like my brothers to me. I know your personality. I know your family. You make fun of me. I tease you guys. Jason Barry, I know exactly who he is. So you kind of need, there's a lot of helpful thoughts that I play out there. When I hear people's story, I can incorporate. It's blessing for me in that way. But it's not the same. Definitely, it's not the same. But you have to make the best what you have, and
nobody can throw tomatoes at you during your hunt.
Well, and to me, I think that's the one thing. When we write our homilies and we practice them at home, or however you do your preparation, and Kelly hears a lot of my homilies before I give them, obviously. But when I get there and I give it, it's different because you do feed off the people, whether it's a baby crying in the back of church, or whether it's somebody that's engaged in you that and you have that look. There's a certain amount of emotions that come from the people to the homilist, right? And we react to that. I mean,
there's something I would talk to you guys fun. There was a friend, kind of older, and of course she watched Mass on live stream, and she very frustrated the fact that during the people comment pop up, and especially on a sign of peace, there's a lot of heart here, heart there, and she's very frustrated. She people not focused. I say, hold on. I say, listen, we are in the Facebook arena, that culture, and she say, that's true, isn't it? But it's something beautiful about it. How can people sign up doing the sign of peace? Apparently people, like I said, I heard only, I don't have Facebook.
Because we can't see it.
Yeah, we can't see it, but the heart flying here, there's kiss blown there. Awesome.
Can you blow a kiss? I didn't know you could blow a kiss.
I don't know, but it does remind me that, make sure you all click the like button. Like, so we get those hearts. No, you can't blow a kiss. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 emotions. A thumbs up, a heart, a laugh, a wow, a sad, and a mad.
That's what all those mad.
No, there's no mads that are coming up. We don't have any mads. We hope we don't make people mad. Lots of dots going up those, which is good.
There they are. I see them now.
Yeah. So we're monitoring over here. This is about just so you all know, there's probably about a 20-second delay between us broadcasting and it showing up on the feed. So tomorrow we've got Easter Vigil at 8:30.
8:30. Yeah.
Yeah. We were just talking about that, kind of planning what we're going to do because this is all new territory for us, right? So we're just kind of break it down here for some folks. We're going to do it in 2 parts because we're going to
2 parts.
Yeah, we're going to have a fire. We're still going to have the fire. We'll do that outside, and then once we once we move into the church, we might have a 30-second delay as we end one live video and start another live video. So just want to make sure people are aware of that. There's not, obviously, hopefully a lot more people tune in tomorrow night than are here tonight. But help spread the word if you've got friends or whatever. We did have some technical difficulties tonight on the Stations of the Cross. So if you were watching the Stations of the Cross earlier today and you got bits and pieces, like you got stations 1, 3, 7, and 9, and you didn't get the rest of them, we've deleted that video and we put a new video up that has the complete station. So if you got time tonight after you put the kids to bed and you want some kind of relive the Passion in a different way, Stations of the Cross are up on the on YouTube and on the Facebook page as well.
And I know a lot of times you'll see comments after a mass thanking. Believe me, thank Deacon Tim, because without Deacon Tim, this ain't happening.
That's
okay?
right.
I don't know how to do it. Father don't know how to do it. And y'all can't behind the camera see all this equipment that's got wires everywhere. I just go where he tells me to sit.
You imagine
Yeah.
our church is almost like 200 years old, and we run a live stream with technology.
Yeah, it's I enjoy it. Thank you for that, Dallas. I do enjoy it. Obviously, I consider it part of my ministry, right? We all have gifts, right? And we all give in different ways. And Father's a fisherman. We found that out today in his Facebook video.
Well, he fished.
Let's leave it at that.
And I don't know how many out there you noticed, but I don't know if I should bring that up. Your reel was upside down.
There's different. I didn't realize this either, but there's.
I'm a fisherman, so
he's a
noticed
fisherman.
it
He
right
can say
on.
this. So he needs to take us fishing, but I guess there's certain ways you hold a reel based on what kind of reel it is.
Yeah, but you must be left-handed, right?
I'm right-handed, but it was given to me. It's not my reel.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you caught a fish that big.
Oh, you'd be surprised. I pray St. Peter. I am Peter.
But
Mary Lynn Peter, right?
You will notice the film. The fish is already in the moss. Okay, that's all I'm saying. When the camera picked back up, okay.
All right. Well, any other comments, thoughts, or whatever? Father, would you like to give us a blessing to kind of close us out here?
Great. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this beautiful evening as we close out the Good Friday and be prepared for the resurrection of your Son, Jesus Christ. Bless all of us, especially the viewer, the family of this Franciscan John community. Give us the grace to persevere and continue to guide us and strengthen us to heal all those who are victim to this pandemic, especially be with the doctor, nurses, and first responder that take the first hand of hospitality and charity and try to help everybody. And I bless you this evening in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. That's the end of the show. So hopefully we'll be back next week. As long as the pandemic's on,
The show is on.
Think of questions.
Yeah, send us questions. Our email addresses are in the bulletin. Bulletin's online. Don't forget to give ssfj.org. Quick URL to get you there quick. Send us questions through our email, and we'll go from there. And if anybody's got any good topics for next week, let us know. And we'll see you next week.
Next week.